So this is the most recent book that I've done. It just came out last month. It's basically the reflection of my journey with Meher Baba, my spiritual journey. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. So I started at Hashmap in January. Well, really December of last year, but I think it became official in January. I started my spiritual path in New York City when I was 17 years old. There was a family tragedy, which I won't go into here because we don't have time for it, but it really woke me up. And it was that type of awakening where I just questioned everything, absolutely everything. And at the end of that process, I realized I needed a spiritual master or a spiritual teacher. And within 2 weeks, Meher Baba was introduced to me in New York. So I've been with him ever since. I've been to India many, many times. I started going in 1988. And most recently in 2018 for my 50th birthday. So India is my favorite country in the world. The culture, the people, I love everything about it. I love the spiritual atmosphere, and I'm intending to retire there. So I have some land in Maharashtra, and I'll tell you about that another time also. I've made many books, starting with Mirage Will Never Quench Your Thirst in 2003. That was to help young people get off of drugs, because Meher Baba said the biggest problem, the biggest spiritual work is to help the young people not use drugs. That was in the 60s, he said that. Since then, I've done books about intuition, one celebrating divine presence, about interfaith. You can see even here, Ganesh is here, Cross for Jesus. I honor the Sikh gurus of Guru Nanak and the Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikhs. I honor Jainism, Islam, Sufism, of course Christianity, and any other ism. It's all really, Meher Baba said, it's all really rivers that all reach the sea, right? It's all one. In 2016, I published Forgiveness with Meher Baba. I was doing lots and lots of work around the world, giving free seminars on forgiveness to help people heal their heart. And as a result of that, one of the people who had been involved with some of the seminars, she said, can you put together something on surrender? So that's how this work came about. Okay, next one. Oh, by the way, I'm going to give a short talk about this, and we're going to have lots of time at the end for questions and answers, because that's more interesting, the interaction. Next one. Yeah. So who is Meher Baba? Some of you may have heard about Meher Baba. He is a spiritual master, born February 25th, 1894 in Pune at the David Sassoon Hospital. He went to St. Vincent's High School in Pune. He went to Deccan College in Pune. And while he was there, he was contacted by Hazrat Babajan. You can see her picture there. She was an ancient woman who used to sit underneath a tree, and she called him over. And when he came over, she kissed him on the forehead. And he said many things about it, but he said that she had given him the experience of bliss, his own divine bliss, the nature of bliss inside. And he said that when that happened and he experienced that, the creation vanished. He was just immersed in bliss. And when he came much later out of that, months later, he came down from that experience, he integrated that and became a functioning master. When he founded a village called Meherabad near Ahmednagar, near Pune, and that village is still thriving today, and his samadhi is there. So that was in 1923. In 1925, he started his silence, July 10th, 1925, and he never spoke again for the rest of his life. For 44 years, he was silent. You know, he was born as Merwan S. Irani. He was from a Parsi Irani family. So they gave him a new name. His disciples called him Meher Baba. And you can see the symbols there on the slide of the schools where he attended. Okay. Next one, yeah. So let's talk about surrender, right? Surrender is not new. It goes back thousands of years. We see in the Gita, if you understand Lord Krishna, I gave the Hindi as I found it in the book, the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Some of you know that book. But I gave a translation. The one that was in the book was a little bit archaic, so I gave a little bit of a smoother translation like this, right? Those unbelievers who are unrefined, foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge has been stolen by the illusions of Maya, and who partake of the atheistic demonic nature, they do not surrender to me. Right? This is the voice of Lord Krishna to Arjuna in the Gita. So we can see here Krishna is talking about the meaning of surrender, that it's for those who are refined, those who are wise, right? Those who are high among mankind. High means not going after desires, right? So we all have a higher self and a lower self. Lower self is chasing desires. Higher self is turning inward towards the higher values, right? We can talk a lot about that. Maya is everywhere, right? Maya is everywhere. Maya creates the illusions. Like, oh, I need that fancy Lamborghini, so if I just keep saving my money, I can buy that fancy car, right? That's Maya, right? We don't need that, right? Our real soul nature is divine. So this is a reminder to get back to the soul nature, right? Atma is soul. And that, when we get back to that nature, we recognize the value of surrender to the divine. So I put this here for many of us really appreciate the Lord Krishna and the Gita. Okay, next one. So also in Jesus, right? Jesus, we see surrender. How? He gave an example in his own life, right? So some of you might know some of the stories. Towards the end of the gospel stories, he is surrounded by the Romans and the Jews who want to, arrest him for his work. And so he went to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane in Jerusalem. And to his disciples, right, he said, pray that you will not fall into temptation. It's the same thing as Lord Krishna said, Maya and illusion. It's the same as temptation. It's just different ways of saying all the same thing. All the great masters throughout time, they say the same thing. It's not new, it's just for the culture where they are, to help the culture where they are. This was in Palestine, right? Then he withdrew about a stone's throw, and he prayed, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. So why do I put this here? Jesus, as a spiritual master, had nothing left to gain for himself. So why would he pray like this? He already said, I am one with the Father. I'm one with God. He already told that. So why would he be praying to the Father if he's already one with the Father? There's only one reason. He prays to show us how to pray. He prays to model for us that behavior which he wants to see in us. And the behavior is not chasing our own will, but offering our will up to God and saying, you know, I have a desire here, I have a want, but more important is what you want. That's surrender. And he modeled that even when it came down to he knew he was going to be arrested and crucified, and he said, if you can take that away, that's great. If not, let it be as you wish, right? Then it says in the same gospel passage, an angel appeared to him and strengthened him, and then he prayed even more deeply, right? Okay, next one. Yeah, so now I bring in Meher Baba, right? So the first one is, I'm quoting myself because it's from the book, right? So what does surrender mean to me? To give up completely what I want and desire, to forgo my plan in favor of what my spiritual master, Meher Baba, or it can be God, or it can be Guru Nanak, or it can be Lord Krishna, it can be any divine presence, right? So it's giving up what I want for what that divine guidance is saying for me, right? So Meher Baba said, spiritual advancement is a succession of one surrender after another until the goal of the final surrenderance of the separate ego life is completely achieved. What does that mean? It means that as you keep surrendering, as you get closer and closer to the truth, the final surrenderance is, I am other than God. I am separate from God. And when you achieve that final surrenderance, you merge in God. It's a oneness, right? Okay, next one. Yeah, so again, I'm quoting myself here to begin, right? So living an egocentric life of desire fulfillment is not going to bring lasting happiness, right? You're not going to be satisfied. You learn this as you get older, right? I'm 51. Everybody has their own journey to take, but I'm just sharing what I know, right? So one day I was traveling around Arizona for work. I had a job where I had to go from different places in Arizona, and Arizona is very large. And driving around, and I had I wanted to go to a restaurant to eat something. So I went in the restaurant, and it was one of those restaurants where all around are signs and paintings on saws and tchotchkes and shelves, and all, you've been in these places. And the hostess takes me through the entire restaurant, all the way to the back. I'm thinking, where is she going? And finally, she points to a table and she says, there's your table right here. And so over the table is a sign that says, half my suffering comes from wanting things my way. The other half comes from getting them my way. And I laughed and when I saw it, and I knew, Baba wants me to see this. My suffering is connected to wanting. So Mayor Baba said, wanting is a state of disturbed equilibrium of the mind, and non-wanting is a state of stable poise. See, so I think, you know, this is going to come up as we go further into this presentation. It comes up in business. I'm trying to make this a practical seminar also. How does this happen in business? Well, I think we've all been in situations at work where things don't go the way we want them to go, right? It can be about the client, it could be about the manager, it could be a coworker, it could be all kinds of stuff. Can we remain in a state of stable poise? Or does our wanting make us very angry and irritable and difficult, right? This is a tricky thing to navigate, right? Very tricky. Yep. Next one. Right. So how do we make this practical, right? So for me, one of the keys to surrender is getting away from the past, getting away from the future, and really settling into what's happening in the present moment, right? So they say anxiety is about the future, right? Depression is about the past, and contentment is about the present moment. In the present moment, is everything okay? And if it is, can I tune in with my intuition? Can I tune in to the present moment and ask, what's the need here right now? What's the best thing I can do in this present moment? How can I be of service to the present moment? And that's different than what I want or what I desire, yeah? So in our workplace, right, at Hashmap, we have so many opportunities to surrender to our manager, right? Srini, you're in there, see? To surrender to our clients. The client may ask something and we say, okay, you know, I can do it. I'm not saying you always do that. I'm saying there are opportunities, right? And many, many other circumstances that we navigate, right? Some strange exception is thrown and we want to get upset, but it may just be, okay, there's something to learn here. Can I remain poised and get through it? Because I can tell you, debugging when you're angry is not as easy as debugging when you're much more calm, right? So this is a discipline. This is an effort. This isn't just some magic. There's no fairy dust. It's about practice. So some people start playing the piano and they're frustrated because they're not playing Mozart or Bach or something, or they pick up the sitar and they don't sound like Ravi Shankar, right? It takes many, many years, sometimes lifetimes of practice. And so you have to start somewhere. And again, this is about do your best, right? This is about do your best to solve the issue without worrying about it. Because at the end of the day, even Krishna said, you do your best and the results of your work you give to me. Because if you're holding on to the results very tightly, you're not going to be in a state of surrender. You're not going to be in a state of poise. Once you do your best and you truly give over the results, what more can you do? And then you'll sleep well, right? Then you can rest. Okay, next one. Yeah. Right, so there's a difference between passive and active surrender. And this came up when I first started this work. Some people get into a state where they're like, I give up, enough, and they're just exasperated and frustrated. And I said to this one woman, I said, I don't think that is the type of surrender that Baba's asking for. And she said, why? Why do you say that? I said, I think he's talking about an active type of surrender. And she said, what is the difference? And I said, well, I get the I give up. I get that you're frustrated and exasperated, but are you really giving yourself over, right? This may sound repetitive, but it's true. Are you really giving up what you want, right? Giving up my will. And again, we get back to Jesus, right? Not my will should be done, but yours. And tuning into what's the divine will for this situation. It may sound silly that this would come up at work, but it actually does, right? Okay, next one. Miranda?
Yes.
Next one.
Sorry.
That's okay. So in the book, I explore 3 types of surrender, and this is what we're going to close the session with before the questions and answers. But there's really 3 types of surrender. There's the healthy surrender, which when we engage that brings us closer to the truth, right? And that's what we've been talking about. Mainly it's about the inner life, right? Tuning into what's going on inside, because any spiritual master will tell you, the divine is within you, right? If you get a message that it's somewhere else to be found, that's very suspicious. It's within you. The toxic type of surrender, I say, is you can say, well, I'm surrendering to this. I'm going to go along with this. I'm going to do this. But it might be unhealthy, means it might be unethical. It might be something that would harm Hashmap or a client or harm yourself, right? It might even be illegal. It could be that you're surrendering to the wrong thing or at the wrong time. It could be that you're surrendering in such a way that you're wearing yourself out. And another thing that can happen is you could come across a situation where somebody's being abusive. And you might say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. But you can. If you're involved enough to see it and witness it, you can step in and stop it. And I've been in this situation a number of times in my life. So it doesn't mean just saying, oh, well, everything is the way it is. That's just how life is. There are times to step up and say, no, you're not allowed to treat that child that way. You're not allowed to treat that woman that way. You're not allowed to treat me that way, whatever it is. So there's a way to surrender that's healthy. Toxic is like that. And deficient, I say, means not enough, right? So you may think you're surrendering, but maybe you're just being complacent. Maybe you're being lazy. Maybe you've got bad habits and you don't want to deal with them, right? Maybe you're still thinking that your desires are going to make you happy, right? So think about that. Okay, next one. Miranda? Yeah. So this is the sound of healthy surrender. Okay, it has a sound, it has a tone, it has a vibration, and it sounds like this, right? Remaining aligned with my moral principles while accepting that others will do the same. Conversation and prayer, being present, right? I'm not going to read them all. Acceptance, happiness, laughter, trust, right? Letting go. That's what healthy surrender is like. And this deck will be made available to anybody who's interested in having it. Yeah. Okay. Next one. Yeah, this is the sound of toxic surrender, right? It sounds like not taking responsibility for my intentions, not accepting responsibility for my actions, despair. No matter what I do, it won't change the world. Why should I bother? Right? Fear-based thinking, right? I know best. Weak subservience, You're exhausted, right? Denial. These are the signs of something toxic going on. Okay, next one. Yeah, and deficient is a little bit of a withering, right? There's not enough. It's not alive and vibrant, right? So it's filled with worry, lack of trust, fears, fear of loss, feeling hopeless, powerless, withholding love, right? Controlling others to conform to my personal whims, right? Justifying my actions, making up stories. These are all the types of things that happen when there's not enough surrender. So if this is what you're experiencing, if this is your kind of vibration and tone, you might want to take note of it and try to move towards a healthier life, right? And this is what we call spiritual practice. Okay, next one. Yeah, so here's real surrender. This is from the message, The 7 Realities from Meher Baba. It's in his book, Discourses. He says, the only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God, right? That's real surrender. Now, I'm not saying that's easy, and I'm not saying that's, you're going to snap your fingers and achieve that. I'm saying that that is a goal. That is something to strive for. And you're never going to play a symphony on the piano unless you practice. It just won't happen, right? You can say, I want to do it, but wanting doesn't get you there. Practicing gets you there. So that's what I think is a beautiful way to close the basic presentation, and then we can go into the Q&A and see what kind of the questions come up. Is there a next slide, or is it the Q&A slide? Yeah, Q&A, right? All right, so that was a lot to share. I don't want to just hear myself talk. I'd like to hear what it is, a seminar where we can all grow and learn from each other. We all have wisdom. We all have insight. What comes up around all this when you hear all this? Anybody?
Hey, hi, Laurent.
Hi, Tushar.
Good evening. Yes, Laurent. So, I have got your book, and I'm pretty excited to read on it,
Thank
and
you.
I will be getting it soon. So, Robert, I have been reading, articles related to, spirituality. The kind of energy. I had some questions. I think only you can answer, because there are. See, there is a book. Okay, I was reading. It was like few months back. By there's a Robert Adams. Okay, so he had written in one of the book. He's an Advaita teacher. So there are 3 stages. Okay, what he was saying. Okay, in the book. I don't remember. I guess it was in a blog. So what he said is, like, there are 3 stages. Okay, like, say a person. Or 3 principles. So basically, a seeker, disciple, and devotee. So I just just wanted to know, like, are these 3 words a same, or just wanted to explore,
No,
because
no, it's
it's
not
kind
the
of
same.
like similar
No,
lines.
yeah,
Yeah.
let me talk about that. Seeker, disciple, and devotee. Yeah. Seeker is somebody who believes that there's something to be found. And so they're seeking that which they feel is spiritually important. Devotee has devoted themselves to the divine. It's like a bhakti path, devotion and love. And that devotion can be towards any aspect of the divine. Could be Ganesh, could be Shirdi Sai Baba, could be Guru Granth Sahib, could be Jesus, it could be the formless infinite of the Jews and the Muslims. It doesn't have to be any specific thing, but you have to, obviously pick something, but it's all true. All of that's true. That's devotee. Disciple means you're in a relationship with a spiritual master who's guiding you. It could be you know, a guru who's spiritually advanced. It could be a sadguru. It could be, you know, in some cases, somebody who's an imposter who really doesn't have anything to offer, but they play act. It's like a charade. They play act so that they can get money or followers or sex or whatever. So you have to be extremely careful in terms of finding a genuine spiritual master. But they are different. And so, you know, you can say that the seeker is the one who starts looking. The disciple has found and is in the relationship with the master. And a devotee may or may not have a relationship with a human being who's a spiritual master. They can be devoted to any type of divine presence. Yeah, does that help?
Oh, yes, yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
I,
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
luckily got that clear. Thanks,
Sure,
Laurent.
sure. Hey, Kevin, glad you could join us. Do we have any other questions?
Just one question, Lauren, on the book. So I just wanted to know. It's like it says Laurent and Companions. So
Yes.
the second half, because I was going through the video. So
Mm-hmm.
just want to know, the second half is kind of like other stories, or they are the experiences by the author, or they are the
Yeah.
stories of those people. Just wanted to know.
The second half of the book is I invited people who I love and trust, who have been walking the spiritual path as I have for many years, decades, and to share their wisdom about surrender. So it's like if you hold up a sapphire or a ruby or a diamond and you're examining this beautiful cut stone from so many different angles. It's like that. Rather than it just be my own singular voice, I wanted to add the richness of their perspectives, and it adds another dimension to the book. So I think you'll enjoy that.
Oh yeah, nice.
Thank you, Tushar.
Hey, Laurent, I'm just starting to pick up some of the spirituality books.
Yes.
And I'm reading this book called Buddhism is True.
Yes.
And in that the author talks about Maya, illusion. I'm just curious to see. I know in the very first pages you talked about. First couple of slides you talked about that. So
Yep.
from your point of view in your journey so far, excuse me, how were you able to separate, or how do you kind of like in your mind kind of like differentiated between what is real versus what is illusion, so on and so forth? Can you give some thoughts around that?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, Srini. By the way, I'm not just saying that because Srini's my current manager at NCR. That is a great question, Srini. So we could probably talk for another half an hour just on this one point. But so look, at the very core of Srini's question is a problem. The problem is, and I'll say it personally, and then we can talk about it universally. But the problem is, I feel separate from the divine. And when I think about that, my thinking is I am separate from the divine. But the thinking is false thinking. It's not actual that I'm separate from the divine, but it is my experience. So that sets up a conundrum. And this is the entire spiritual conundrum, which is once we become awake to spiritual truths, we want the state of enlightenment or self-realization or oneness, or in every faith they have a different way of saying it, but in Buddhism it's enlightenment, so let's stick with that. And yet there are barriers to overcome. The barriers have to do with my values. So if we get into false thinking, we get into false values. So for example, Jesus and other masters said, be in the world, but not of it. And many people have argued about what does that even mean? I can tell you what it means from my point of view. It means here I am, I'm in the world. Not of it means my values are not worldly values. I'm striving to have higher divine values. So for example, if, and I'm speaking from experience here, if I go to work and I'm married and somebody who I encounter says, oh, I want to be with you, come be with me. And I say, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity. My wife doesn't know, and I go off thinking that's going to make me happy. And all I'm doing is gratifying my desires for something. Well, that's worldly values. That anybody in the world can do that. But if I say, no, I'm married and I value my relationship and I'm not going to engage in that, you can be kind about it and firm and say no. Anytime there's an opportunity, there's a choice of higher and lower values. There's usually many spectrum, a full spectrum of choices, but you can very rapidly, as you practice, determine what's the low choice here and what's the high choice here and what's in between. So it could be about false thinking about the value of money. People on Wall Street, trading stocks 12 hours a day. They can't sleep because they're constantly thinking about their stocks and how much money, and then they lose, $50,000. A great example was a guy in the housing market correction. You remember the housing bubble burst, and there was a stock market correction, and I think he lost $10 million of his fortune. He had, I think he had 30 million and he lost 10 million, so he only had 20 million. So he committed suicide because who could live on just $20 million? It's like that, where you start thinking that something has a value other than it really has, right? So Baba said, Maya means you think that which is unimportant is important. You think that which is important is unimportant, right? So you're changing the value of things and you're giving values to things other than they really have, right? So maybe in ancient times, people striving for power to be, a senator or a ruler or a king. And in order to get that position, being ruthless, right? Treating people horribly, physically abusive, maybe not sharing their wealth, whatever it is. So at every step and stage of life, our thinking and our values are connected. So if we can get closer to what Buddha actually calls right thinking, right values, right livelihood, right effort. If you read Buddha's path, the Eightfold Path, which is beautiful and I love it, it has to do with that. It has to do with overcoming Maya. And in the Buddhist tradition, it's called Mara with an R, Mara. It's like the evil force, the negative force, the tempting force. Every faith has it. In Zoroastrianism, it's Ahriman, right? So they all have this pull away from the divine. And then on the top, you have the angelic forces, angels, archangels, and in Hinduism, gods and goddesses, right? And in the world, spiritual masters, saints, pulling us up. So humans are caught in this bind with these negative temptations and the heritage that we have of evolution through the animal form, right? We came from this giant evolutionary path where we still have anger, lust, greed, right? You look at the animals, they're not all sharing their food. They're very lusty. They can be very angry. They're not divine. They're on their way to the divine, but they're not there yet. So many humans act like that, lusty, angry, greedy. And so it's not bad, but it's to be overcome. It's to be risen above. And that's what the values have to do with it. So Mayavic values, Maya values, are always going to be the lower values, and they're going to appeal to your desires. Does that make sense, Srini?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Preetpal. I actually have 3 questions. Hey, buddy, how are you?
3 questions.
Yeah, actually, 1 comment and 2 questions, actually, right? So, my first one is, I started reading the book and I see that in the initial, pages of the book, you're quoting a lot of like folks like Rumi and Hafiz and others, right? So can you talk to me a little bit more about what has been your learnings when you read Hafiz or Rumi and others, right? So that's question number one.
Sure.
Question number two is, is it fair to say, is it your learning or your understanding that the entire Eastern sphere, when I say Eastern sphere, take anything east of Istanbul or Constantinople, whatever you want to call it, right? The east of that, all the way to Japan, right? The dominant strand of existence is essentially a teacher-disciple relationship. And the teacher-disciple relationship is such that, like, for example, I'll give you an example, right? So take the Bushido way, right? So the Bushido way is the way of the samurai. And, they use a term called Ronin over there, right? So the Ronin refers to a samurai who doesn't have a master, right?
Correct.
And it is considered as, hey, this is a disdainful existence, you are a what is the right word? You are a prestigeless or respectless samurai if you don't have a master, right? And there have
a bit of an outcast.
Yeah, meaning it's considered spiritually disrespectful for that, right? I mean, there have been movies like 47 Ronin, etc., celebrating death in the name of your master as well, to that extent, right?
Yeah.
So, what it's curious to know, right? I mean, how does your book / your learnings, reflect upon this teacher-disciple phenomenon? So that's my question number two. And lastly, last question is this, right? So we all live in a Western civilization, right? There is quite a bit of emphasis on individuality, right? And individuality is, there's a lot of I-ness, like it's about me, I need to be happy, I need to be this, I need to be that, right? I need to be rich, I need to be blah, 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 blah. It's my point is that it's a lot of, we live in a construct where it's about my personal thing, right?
Yep.
So how do you reconcile what you're saying versus the individuality of a human being?
Well, I would expect nothing less than these fantastic questions from you, my brother. I think I'll start with the last one and then work my way backwards. When I was at JP Morgan Chase, I opened up the India office for our division. I interviewed 400 people, hired 11, trained them, added more people. My understanding of the Eastern culture, having been in India since '88, back and forth, and working closely with many cultures, not just in India, but many cultures, is that there's a giant difference. And the difference is, in the East, we all succeed or we all fail. And in the West, if one succeeds, he or she will do that even at the expense of their own family and friends. And it's a very extremely ruthless culture in the West around that, and I don't like that. So what's happening, whether you realize it or not, is since I grew up as a kid, I'm 51, right? The Eastern culture has become almost mainstream in the West, and meaning the West has embraced it. When I was a kid, reincarnation was maybe, right? Now a journalist in a newspaper or magazine will write about reincarnation as if it's a fact, not even a question, but a fact. And yet at the same time, I go to Mumbai or these other places around India, and when I first started going, people were wearing saris and Punjabis and you know, kurtas and all this. Now it's all Western clothing. They don't want that, and they want the cell phones, and they want the nice cars. So there's a big thing going on between the East and West where things are shifting. And my belief is, my bottom line belief is, what's going on right now with COVID and these protests and lots of other things that are, you know, I believe about to happen, is it's a shaking. And that shaking is asking people, what is it you really value, and how are you going to go forward? I am supremely grateful to Preetpal and Hashmap, because I feel so happy. You can ask my wife. I wake up and I tell her how happy I am working here. This is an incredible culture that we have. It's rare also. I've been in many work cultures. We have a rare, beautiful culture. But part of that is because I believe we have the right values. And I think we have to maintain those right values and encourage those right values. And you're doing that by allowing me to even participate in this way. So I think that America will have to shift, and the West will have to shift towards, let's be in this together. And I think what you're seeing, and I don't want to name names and get political, but I think what you're seeing in some of the other values in America and in the West is the death of those values, which are narrow and extremist and racist and unloving and unkind. That way is dying. The old way, the divisive way, the false values and false thinking is dying, but it's dying a very violent death. It's not a peaceful death. It's not going out quietly. And that I believe, with every fiber in my being, I believe a day is dawning with the right values that we're talking about. I honestly believe that, and I work for that every day. In my spare time, when I'm not trying to help Srini with NCR. Okay, the other one was, you talked about the master-disciple relationship, like a masterless samurai and all that. Yeah, so, you know, Srini, you have Buddha, you have Preetpal, you have Guru Nanak, I have Meher Baba, some person has Shirdi Sai Baba. Whoever you choose, Jesus, right, Miranda, whoever you choose, that relationship is timeless. Those masters are not fixed in time. Hafiz, Rumi, yes, they lived as a human, but the wisdom that comes through is timeless. Jesus said, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. And what does that mean? It's very poetic, but what it means is anybody who wholeheartedly reaches out and strives to connect with the divine through that relationship with the master, whether the master's alive or not, there's a response. And the response is because if you take away all the illusion, all the Maya, which is that, you know, I'm a separate person than, you know, Amanda, and Amanda is a different person than Kevin, and Kevin's a different person than, you know, Preetpal. If you take all that away, it's like God has millions of hands, and it's all hand puppets, and it's all God's hand in every hand puppet. We're all really one. So if you take all that away, what you're going to find out is what came through the master is really your own higher self, your own divine nature coming through the master as a mirror so that you can wake up and say, I am that. That's what Rumi taught. He said, say, I am you. Hafiz taught that the highest goal is to merge with the beloved. He's not talking about the beautiful girl, although there was a beautiful girl in his life. That became a symbol for him of merging with the divine beloved, right? Doesn't Guru Nanak say Ekankar, right? However you look at the divine, there's always a way to express somehow the divine, and then there's the longing to become one with that. And that's what the great masters encourage. They encourage movement, and the movement isn't to go anywhere but within, to the core of your own heart, to the center of your own being, where you'll find your own divine nature. In the beginning, it looks like the divine is separate, but at the end, it's all one. There's only one. So getting back to false thinking, everything becomes false thinking except the one thing: I am that. I am that, and you are too. So anything that's divisive or separating can't be true, because it's all one. I'm also a non-dualist, as you can tell. So Advaita says there can never be two. It's not God and, it's God in, God as. Everything is really God. And Meher Baba says when you achieve self-realization, you experience all the saints, all the masters, all the gods, all the goddesses, Guru Nanak, Ganesh, Archangel Michael. All of them are aspects of your own divine nature. You experience that. And then he says, what then, when you have that experience? Then you experience being completely free, but when you look at others, you find yourself bound in them. And he says, then all you can do is help them to become free like you. There's nothing left to do. How's that, Preepal?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for that explanation.
And when I read Hafez and Rumi, and I've translated them also from Persian, for days, not just a short amount of time, for days, my heart is full of love, and I feel closer to the presence of God. It doesn't mean that the presence of God came nearer to me. It means that I turned my attention towards the presence of God. And I used to have a bumper sticker on the back of my car. It said, feeling distant from God, guess who moved? It's always me. It's always me who moved further away. So all I need to do is focus my attention on the divine, and there, the divine is present. But that's my discipline. That's my effort, right? And translating a poem from Persian or from Punjabi, I was trying to find Guru Nanak's statements about surrender in Punjabi in the Guru Granth Sahib on my phone, but my Punjabi is not going to get me there. So but it's always there. The presence is always there. It's always right near you. You just have to turn your attention to it. And, you know, Srini, back to false values, is it, I'm going to watch TV for 3 hours? Or another option is I could go take a walk and repeat a name of God, right? Repeat a divine name or divine mantra or divine sound. It's always a choice. Okay, but I think we have time for some more questions. How are we doing for time, Miranda?
We have like 8 minutes to go.
That's enough time for at least one more question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Anybody feeling bold?
Hey, this is Keegan.
Hey, Keegan.
Hey, I just jumped in here because I saw that you were the author, but now I am kind of curious. What's a good place to start?
What did you say? What's a good place to start?
Yes.
Wow, that's a great question. So I take a deep breath when I hear that, and the first thing I say is, before you even go any further, is there anything that you've experienced or encountered that you feel that resonates with you, that you feel drawn to, or is it not even at that point?
Well, I actually used to teach Taekwondo.
Yeah,
I did.
I've taken Taekwondo.
I did over 9 years.
Yeah.
And I got into a little bit of Buddhism stuff with my master.
Great.
But yeah, so I have a little bit of background in, I guess, spirituality.
Yeah. Well,
But,
Buddhism is a great place to start. What you'll find out is, if you explore this, I use this analogy because I think it's extremely fitting. You know, when you go to get ice cream at the ice cream parlor, there's many flavors, right? Dozens sometimes of flavors. And you're reading and you're looking at them and you're reading the tags and all that. And you say, well, it's basically down to that one and that one, maybe that one. And you ask for that little spoon. the little taste of it, and that helps you make a decision. At the end of the day, whichever path you choose, I as sure as I'm sitting here, I know it'll get you closer to the truth. So it's not so much, from my point of view, it's not so much as important as which one you pick, but that the one you pick resonates with your heart, because it's hard work. I'm not going to pretend that this is easy. I've been at it for quite a while, and it reminds me of a story. Preet Paul, you'll appreciate this one. Meher Baba was very well respected as a master, and one guy came to him and spent some time with Baba, and Baba was very happy to see him. And as the guy was leaving, namaste and all that, the guy said, "Oh, Baba, I forgot to ask you. What's my spiritual work? What should I do?" And Baba started laughing and said, "Don't worry, it'll come to you. You won't have to look for it." And I think the point is, life will continually bring us exactly what we need to work on. All the lessons are lined up and coming. The part that is hard isn't looking for the spiritual work, it's how do we respond? Because the control that we have in life is almost nothing. We can control almost nothing. We can try all we want. The control I have is how am I responding in this present moment. That I have some amount of control over. How am I responding means, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? What's coming out of my mouth? And then I've got hands and feet. What am I doing with my body, right? That's a big deal. So I would say the easiest answer is pick what resonates most with you right now and go with it as far as you can until something else resonates more deeply.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. We have time for one more, Miranda?
We have
Last
5
question?
more minutes left.
One, okay.
Hey, Laurent. This is Sachin from India. So, first
Hey,
of all,
how are you for being awake?
yeah,
I know
I'm
it's late.
good. No issues. I just actually read the title and just stayed awake for this.
Thank you.
So, I don't have actually much questions. I just have a request. So, next time when you visit India, just let me know so that we can take a long walk throughout the India.
Thank you. Thank you. I would be so happy to do that. I keep asking Prejon and others, is it open? Can I come back? Because I'm dying to come back to India. I want to come to the Hashmap office. I want to build my house there. And so as soon as it's open, you let me know, okay?
Yeah, sure, definitely. And
Thank
keep
you.
writing and keep enlightening us. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's my joy to be here sharing with you all.
Hey, Laurent, just
Yeah.
one last question. I
Yes,
just
Tusha.
wanted some help if you could, share some light on this. I mean, I just want to know, there have been some misconceptions. I mean, see, it's all positive energies, what we try, but then, the law of attraction and surrender. So, if you could just share some light on that, that'll clear some doubts.
Yes. Sure. So, there was a time when I really didn't know what my next move was going to be in terms of business. And so I prayed to Meher Baba and I said, Baba, this is all in your hands. All of my life, my family, my work, the writing for you, everything, it's all really yours. It's not mine. I surrender to you. And day after day, I deepened that. And at that time, I was writing to all my contacts in LinkedIn. And what I was writing was, here's the work I did recently in Python and Kafka and all that. And I was just sharing all my work. But while I was sharing my work with all my contacts in LinkedIn, I was praying, this is all yours, Baba. All of this. This is not belonging to me. My very life doesn't belong to me. And at that time, Preet Paul responded, and he said, why don't you come work at Hashmap? I didn't say a word about surrender. I didn't say a word about spirituality. I just shared my work. It was good work. It was I'd written some applications about how to use HDFS from Python and all this kind of stuff. It was good technology, solid technology. But the point for me was, if I do my best and I surrender, I can trust that there'll be a response that will guide me to what's next. And in this case, I put it in the book also. In this case, Preetpal was the one who responded, and I knew Baba was saying, go to Hashmap. Hope that's okay to say that, Preetpal. Oh, there's the confirmation. See?
That's always Freddie's dog. Well, good work, Laura. Thank you very much. It was very insightful, and it speaks.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Laurent.